Come, come, whoever wherever you are welcome here. Oh, I love that. I learned this morning that you're also welcome to have dessert for breakfast. Because cake with ice cream is a lot like having cereal with milk. Good advice. We're so glad that you wandered here to Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. We are a progressive community with 6 core values surrounded by the central value of love. And that love connects us to people of all ages, races, identities, orientations, and religious backgrounds. It is this central focus of love that makes our cooperative friendship with the Bread Loaf Mountain Zen Center such a joyous and special gift to us. So several UU members are also part of the Zen Center or Gather, and Sensei Joshin Byrnes is a treasured, I don't say his last name much at all, so is a treasured friend of many of us, if not all of us. And we're so glad that Joshin is here to lead the service, but there are several UU members and Zen Buddhist friends who are also lending their voice to this service. Colleen Jishu Brown, Rosalie Cryan, and Dinah Smith, Earle Morris, and Revell Allen, thank you for shaping this very special service. I promise not to talk long. That's going to be hard for me. I'm working on it. Also this week, I want to say thank you to the CVUUS office staff, Laura Sermley, our administrative assistant, our coordinator, our interim ministers, Patricia Hart and Christina Solari, Mary Conlon, our bookkeeper, Terry Arnold, our event coordinator, Keith, our custodian. Thank you, friends, for your impossible task of keeping this busy community coordinated. Now, if you wanted to add a special thank you to our ministers, then our interim ministers will be celebrating their time with us on June 14, and sign up with Ellen and Brett. Ellen and Brett, if you could stand and help us put a face with your name. Okay, so Ellen is the person to go to. Ellen, if you would like to help with the refreshments or the details of June 14th. Oh, my name. My name is Liam Battjes Greenwood. I use he, him pronouns. I identify as a queer, white male, special education teacher, a teller of endless dad jokes, a former Protestant minister, and now an agnostic who protests the social problems that stand in the way of us living out love. Racism, classism, violence, war, and the ownership of Ben & Jerry's by Unilever. I also lend my voice to the plight of Native nations, especially the Western Abenaki, whose traditional homeland is now owned by the United States. And they would find that peculiar. On this Memorial Day weekend, I would like to pause and remember the many brave and determined people who have lived for hundreds of generations on this land, but were displaced and nearly erased. Thousands resisted and died to defend their relationship to Indakana, their homeland, the waters, fish, animals, fields, and forests. And I invite you this Memorial Day weekend to take a hike sometime and to think about those descendants and, actually, those who came before us and their descendants who are still among us, who call this home, this land home. I'd also invite you right now to silence those beeping devices that we may have on us so that we can be present with those who are gathered among us here and also be present with ourselves. I don't know what you have brought into this space, a joy or a concern. If you have something on your heart that you would like to share with the community, write it on a yellow card so that put it in the offering plate and we can share that aloud with the community. If you have something more confidential, then you can write it on a pink card and put it in the back in an envelope, and our caring network will respond. Or if you're ready, you're a visitor among us, and you're ready to share that information, personal contact information, or you'd like your own personal name tag, then fill out a blue card. I also promise to highlight some pathways to connections as quickly as possible. They are in your bulletin, but I'm going to give them a verbal highlight. If you'd like to connect with Memorial Day in a way that honors those who have served in the U.S. military, I would encourage you to join UBU this week. Meets on Thursday. We will be sharing the documentary Trans Military, a look at trans people who have served in our military with the courage to defend liberty and justice for all. The movie starts at 6. It's going to be in the Fenn Chapel. Allies and queer people are more than welcome. Our Rhubarb Festival is this coming Saturday, and if you could connect with some rhubarb plant and stalk them, harvest their stalks, that would be good. We could use all the rhubarb and rhubarb crisps you can make. You can join a pie-making bee, and that would be sweet. Contra dancing is a great way to connect with others. Connect with their right hand, left hand, do-si-do, promenade. Yes, you can connect. It's gender neutral. It is Friday, June 5. You could connect with a Coldplay concert. Coldplay concert here in our sanctuary by Lumos. It's done with candlelight, and it's a stringed trio. Tickets are available online for June 6th, and they may go quick. Most importantly, I think this is most important, you can connect with 20 new CVUUS members who are going to be part of our community. If you don't know them yet, next week we're going to celebrate their part of this community, and you could invite them to a hike, a bike, a cup of coffee downstairs, a rhubarb pie. You could invite them to go contra dancing or go to the Coldplay concert together. You can make some good connections. Now, let's connect with worship.
Good morning. I'm Jishu. I'm also called Colleen, which is how most of you know me. And as many of you know, I study and serve as a novice priest at the Breadloaf Mountain Zen community here in Middlebury, which is in the Zen peacemaker tradition. It may seem strange to see me here in my robes and using my Dharma name. It is for me too. But last week here at CVUUS, we were invited to show up in an outfit that expresses something of ourselves. So I'm doing that today. I'm grateful to be with you this morning in this outfit. It expresses my vow to be in part of a heart embrace and to feel committed to the liberation of all people. And it has sleeves big enough to give refuge and comfort to those I wish to serve. I know that each of us arrives from different places this morning. Some of us came with ease and joy in our hearts. Some of us came carrying something heavy. We arrive from different traditions, different philosophies, different spiritual paths. We have different ways of seeing the world. We have different ways of being in the world. Yet some things are the same for all of us. We all breathe air. We all have hearts that beat. We're born, we live ordinary lives, everyday lives, miracles of ordinariness. But when all is said and done, we all pass on. It's a poignant truth of our lives. It's also true that during this life, each of us wants safety, goodness, and happiness for ourselves and for others. So however you came, whatever brought you here, whatever path has taken you here, you are welcome in this place, in this moment, in each other's company. My invitation to you is simple. Settle in, be natural, rest in your breath. Notice the person next to you. Notice yourself here in this room this morning. We just arrive, and now we just begin together. And we'll begin by lighting our chalice. I invite Rosalie to come forward to light the chalice and invite all of you to join me in the chalice lighting. Lighting this candle, offering the light to countless beings, the peace and joy I feel brighten the face of the earth. We've got a stubborn candle. Little fashion matter. Thank you, Rosalie. It's okay. So please, excuse me, join me in the responsive reading. It's not a really responsive reading. I'm asking you to join me for the words that are in bold, and then I'll read on. It's in your order of service. It's called For All Beings by Zenju Earthland Manual. May all beings be cared for and loved, be listened to, understood, and acknowledged despite different views, be accepted for who they are in this moment, be afforded patience, be allowed to live without fear of having their lives taken away or their bodies violated. May all beings be well in its broadest sense, be fed, be clothed, be treated as if their life is precious, be held in the eyes of each other as family. May all beings be appreciated, feel welcomed anywhere on the planet, be freed from acts of hatred and desperation, including war, poverty, slavery, and street crimes. Live on the planet housed and protected from harm, be given what is needed to live fully without scarcity. Enjoy life without fear of one another. Be able to speak freely in a voice and mind of undeniable love. May all beings receive and share the gifts of life, be given time to rest, be still, and experience silence. May all beings be awake. And now I'd like to invite the children up to the front row here for Time for All Ages. Good morning. How are you all doing? This morning we're going to read a story called Squabbling Squashes. Do any of you ever squabble? Gwen, you don't squabble?
Now my baby cousin does.
Oh, of course. So here we go. In the country of Japan, there are many Buddhist temples. Some of the Buddhist temples are in cities and are very big, with lots of monks living there. And some are very small, with only a few monks. Do you all know any monks? Yes, you do. Me. You know a monk. One of the temples in the country has a big garden behind it. It is the temple where monk Joshin lives. Oh, do you know a Joshin? Yeah, right up there. That's Joshin. Monk Joshin and all the monks in the temple grow vegetables in the garden to make delicious meals. Oops. I'm moving. One of Monk Joshin's favorite vegetables is squash. There are many squashes growing in a long line in the garden. The squashes are very happy in the garden because the monks take very good care of them, giving them water and using small hose to take away the weeds so they grow to be very healthy squashes. One day, the monks hear a lot of noise coming from the garden. I'll bet you all would be a little alarmed if you heard noise coming from your gardens. The squashes are shouting at each other. They're fighting about who is the most beautiful squash and who is the squash that the monks like best. Monk Joshin comes into the garden to see what all the fuss is about. He says in a loud voice, "Hey, you squashes, you seem to be getting very upset. Let me teach you something that might help." Then he shows them how to become quiet. He says, "Try this. Sit up nice and straight and hold your hands like this. Lower your eyes and try not to look around. There's no need to say anything. Just sit quietly, breathing in and breathing out." The squashes begin to sit like Monk Joshin shows them, and they become less angry, and they stop yelling and squabbling. They become more and more quiet and peaceful. Then Monk Joshin says in a very quiet voice, "Now squashes, put your hands on top of your heads." The squashes put their hands on the top of their heads, and when they do, one of them says, "This is very strange. There is something attached to the top of my head." They see there is a vine that connects them together. One of the squashes says, "Hey, squashes, we are all tied together. We are all on the same vine." Monk Joshin nods his head. Yes, you are connected. You live together on the same vine. The squashes think about this. Then one of them says, "It's true that we are all different squashes. Some are bigger and some are smaller. Some are rounder, some are longer. But even if we are different, we are all connected. We are all growing together. We don't have to be squabbling squashes. We could live together in the monk's garden in peaceful connection." And so they did. See how they're all sitting like Monk Joshin? Nice and quiet with their hands folded, their eyes going down, peaceful. And here's a picture of them again, just little squashes all together. Just like you, little squashes all together. And now we'll sing the children off to Ari. Thank you for listening. No, I'm not Dinah. Dinah wasn't feeling well this morning, so she couldn't be here. So I want to introduce the time in our service where we all get to engage in the wonderful practice of generosity. This month, our offering is being shared by the Green Mountain Club Bread Loaf section and the Climate Economy Action Center. And I'm going to invite Earle to come up and tell us a little bit about one of those donees, the Green Mountain Club.
Hi, good morning. The Bread Loaf section of the Green Mountain Club is a group of volunteers that maintains hiking trails of Addison County, including the Long Trail and its side trails. We run programs for hiking, biking, kayaking, snowshoeing, and skiing. We host speaking events and workshops to encourage people to get out in nature, improve their physical and mental health, and learn stewardship of our mountains and natural resources. Donations support these activities. This axe was being used by a volunteer this month who throws the discus and hurls the hammer at Middlebury College. She explained to me that the hammer is a metal ball weighing 8.8 pounds attached to a cable. She spins around and around and hurls it 150 feet. And it may be that she was too strong to be on our crew. But this is an example of equipment that has to be maintained. If you want to help, you can join our section. You can come out for trail crew days, and you can also make a donation to the plate. Thank you for your support.
Our offering will now be received, and I want to just remind everyone that in generosity, the giver and the receiver both benefit. So please give as generously as you can. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's really a lovely honor to get to read these milestones and passages, and this morning, all joys, which is so lovely. From Anne Christie, I share my joy to see the signboard in front of the East Middlebury Post Office, something close to Happy Memorial Day, and remember why we celebrate. From Cass Singh, Congratulations to Sydney Singh as she graduated with her BA in theater last Saturday from VTSU Castleton. Congratulations to all who are graduating from Middlebury College today. Woohoo! Yeah. And from Liam Battjes. This week, he says, actually earlier this morning, my daughter Lydia Battjes announced her engagement to a kind and wise man named Liam Ryan. They have set a date of September 9 for their wedding, but Mike and I have already started to celebrate their loving relationship. Wonderful. And now we have just a moment to enjoy some silence together.
Between sections to give us all a chance to reflect on these words. You may also just sit, eyes open or closed, quietly, and take in these ideas. Community Zen, loving kindness. May each of us who long for peace in the world commit to working with the anger and fear in our own hearts. May each of us who long for a world with less conflict commit to resolving the conflicts in our own lives, however small. May each of us who long for social harmony commit to being a good neighbor to those close to home. May each of us who long for a world where everyone belongs commit to coming closer to those we fear, avoid, or have turned away from. May each of us who long for children to be safe and cared for commit to supporting the parents and caregivers who are struggling. May each of us who are troubled by violence commit to ensure no one lives in hopelessness and despair. May each of us who want a safer place to live commit to repairing relationships and practicing restorative justice, remembering that without healing, there can be no true peace for anyone. May each of us who weep for the lonely, the lost, and the left behind. Commit to widening our hearts for ourselves, for one another, especially those we find most difficult to love. May each of us who want to heal the planet awaken to the interdependence of all that is, and remember that our own health and happiness depend on the health and happiness of all beings. May we practice peace by staying close to this place, to these people, to this moment. May all things know peace, here, there, everywhere.
Thank you, Revell, for reading that so beautifully. Good morning, everybody. My name is Joshin. I know many of you, but not all of you. It's really quite lovely to be here, and I am the guiding teacher, some say the abbot or the executive director, the key kind of toilet cleaner and bottle washer at Breadloaf Mountain Zen Community, which functions and operates in very close relationship with many of you here in this congregation. So it's really nice to be here, and thank you very much for having us. And I guess this is like Buddhist Sunday, woohoo, which is kind of fun. Some of you who are newer to CVUUS may not know how closely our two communities are joined together. Breadloaf Mountain Zen and this congregation have a long history. Jishu, Colleen Brown, and Sue Grigg, who I gave the name Kyosin to, helped found our fledgling Zen Center back in 2017. And they were the first two to receive these funny Dharma names in our space. Since then, we've had about 75 people receive Dharma names, receive the precepts. We have another 20 or 25 this year. So we're growing, and that's really wonderful, and growing deeply in our relationship with all of you. I also was very involved here at CVUUS back in the early 2000s. I saw Johanna there somewhere. Johanna, and we were dear friends. She, in fact, did our civil union for me and my partner around our kitchen table years ago. I taught here our whole lives and traveled with our youth down to New Orleans after Katrina and had really wonderful connections to this lovely group of people. I'm actually hoping that schedules allow me to get more involved here in the years to come. I consider this place one of my spiritual homes. And Jisho already mentioned our little outfits this morning. This is not how we dress every single day, but it is how we dress every now and then. We also show up in t-shirts and hoodies as part of our practice, actually. But Liam suggested that we wear our robes today. And so I want to say a little something about them. We sew these robes ourselves when we first ordain as novice priests, or as the little book called us, monks. These two terms get changed. And we sew them through a very slow process that gives us time to really consider what we're taking on. And as Jishu mentioned, these very big sleeves, wide sleeves, they come from a story. A bodhisattva, which is a figure who's awakening to the oneness of life is bound up with relieving the suffering of all beings. And the bodhisattva, in this case it's a bodhisattva named Jizo, that some of you may be familiar with, walks through the hell realms, and where there are people kind of crying out in anguish. And these sleeves offer a refuge to those beings. And the suffering beings can climb in or hop in, and they experience some care there. And that care is the beginning of a process of transformation that opens their own hearts so that they too can become a refuge for others. And so the circle of care widens. So we wear these robes to remember that this is our job in life, to walk through the world, to provide refuge and comfort with the hope that all beings who are comforted and who find refuge can begin to offer it themselves to others. 2 weeks ago, I was here at service at CVUUS, and Reverend Tricia gave a really wonderful sermon. Do you call it a sermon here? Yeah, is that okay? Okay. We don't call them sermons in our place. And by the way, this is hard for me to do in 15 minutes because when we give a talk, I just kind of talk. And then 45 minutes later, we decide, well, I'm kind of done. And so I'm trying to be disciplined. But she gave a really wonderful talk on learning to be good. And she borrowed a word from the social scientist Dolly Chugh, and she offered that we humans may find that we're not always good, but we are good-ish. Do you remember that? She mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. I love that. We are good-ish. We are always in process, never quite finished. I feel goodish sometimes. And a month or two ago, I spoke at an interfaith gathering here in Middlebury. Some of you might have been there. And it was about welcoming the stranger, kind of bearing witness to some of the challenges being faced by those who are trying to find refuge here in this country. And after the service, which was had many of us from many different faith traditions up there representing a little bit, saying something about how our tradition welcomes the stranger, someone came up to me and touched my arm and said in a hushed and smiling tone, "I'm on your side. I'm on your side." And it was a little funny. They meant, I'm not really on the Christian side, I'm not on the Jewish side, I'm not on the Muslim side, which were all also represented there that night. They meant our side. That they were subtly suggesting that there was a better side, a good side. Wink, wink. We know, we're part of that club. And I had to smile a bit. This is goodishness in action. We are good, and we are at the very same moment in our effort to be good, also taking sides, creating a binary, a less good on the other side of the line. And so I want to talk this morning about metta, which means loving kindness, one of Buddhism's best-known practices, and you've heard already this morning a few versions of that. And metta is a practice that is built precisely to cultivate and generate limitless goodwill. It's often sentimentalized, like, oh, loving kindness, isn't that sweet? But in truth, I believe metta, or loving kindness practice, cultivating limitless goodwill, is actually one of the most demanding practices I know of. So where does this come from? The phrase comes from a very ancient text, the Metta Sutta. A sutta is a teaching. And metta means loving kindness or goodwill. And the sutta asks us to, quote, cultivate an infinite heart of goodwill without limit. To cultivate an infinite heart of goodwill without limit, extended above, below, and all around. And I'm glad that Middlebury graduation's going on today because the English professors are probably over there. But any English professor might ding the Metta Sutta for redundancy. An infinite heart of goodwill should be enough to say. But the text adds to infinite without limit. Infinite and without limit. The first part is the infinite heart. It's the aspiration. It lifts our eyes up and out into a cosmic perspective, born of spiritual imagination and a little bit of abstraction. The second half is there for a reason, I think. The redundancy is intended. The second half of the phrase, without limit, is the honest and challenging part of that practice, reminding us that it happens right here. It admits that we experience limits of our goodwill. And that is the point where that there is a point, an edge, where our goodwill runs out. And it asks us to reach past that point anyway. We are practicing with being goodish, with our goodishness. The limit of our goodwill itself is not a failure. The edge where our goodwill hits the wall, where it gets hard, where we want to say, I'm on your side and not on that side, is not a failure or a sin or an embarrassment in a Buddhist framework. The edge, when approached without harshness of blame and shame, is instead truth-telling. And this truth-telling is the practice. It's where the real work of practice happens. So my question for myself, for all of us this morning, is what does the edge, what does the limit of my goodwill look like? Where do I meet it? And what do I do when I hit it? In truth, we do not love everyone equally. Rabbi Shai Held recently wrote a wonderful book called Judaism is About Love. Maybe you've heard him interviewed recently. He's been making the rounds. And he calls this truth that we do not love everyone equally an important thing for us to look at. He says we actually love in concentric circles. He says we love our own children more than we love other people's children. And this is true. We center our own children. But if we take that to extremes, this is often what allows us to bomb someone else's children in order to protect our own. It is indeed easiest to extend goodwill to those closest to us, and harder for those who are further out, and hardest of all for those who have hurt us, or who threaten us, or who we believe are hurting the world. That gradient of goodwill is in the Metta Sutta, which is reflected in the structure of the Metta Sutta, is not a defect in us. It is how we learn what love is in the first place. We learn about love within and from the particulars, in loving this child, this friend, this neighbor. We don't learn about love and goodwill in the abstract. We have to learn love close up in our lives. And you might notice that this is the structure of the Metta Sutta. It teaches to love through and within concentric circles. May I feel loving kindness. May someone I care for know loving kindness. May someone I don't know loving kindness. May someone I don't like know loving kindness. There's a study that shows that gradient of goodwill, perhaps with uncomfortable clarity. And forgive me, I'm going to try a sports analogy here, which is really not my strong suit. Sorry, Barnaby. I am not a sports guy at all. But I heard about a project called the Empathy Gym, trying to understand how empathy functions and how it strengthens and grows. English psychologists gathered a group of devoted, I see Aisho here from the UK, Manchester United fans. Apparently, we know them from Ted Lasso. That British soccer fandom runs deep. And the researchers had each Manchester fan write down why he loved his team. And then they sent the fan out across campus to watch a film somewhere else. And on the way, the Manchester fan, who had just written about why they loved their team, passed a jogger who fell on the ground and was clutching his ankle. The jogger was actually an actor for the experiment, wearing on different days a different t-shirt or jersey. Some days it was a Manchester t-shirt, and other days it was a Liverpool t-shirt, which apparently is the fiercest rival of the Manchester team. So the fans stopped to help the fallen Manchester supporter. The man in the Liverpool shirt, they consistently stepped around. Yeah. Then the researchers ran this experiment again. But instead of asking the fans to write about which team they loved or why they loved their team, they asked them a bigger question: why they loved soccer itself, not just their team. So the same fallen jogger, the same t-shirts, and now the Manchester fans stopped for the Liverpool fallen jogger as well. Nothing about the injured man had changed. What changed was the circle the fans were standing in. Soccer lover, it turns out, is a wider circle than Manchester fan. And the rival was suddenly inside of a bigger circle of care. So limitless goodwill does not ask us to abolish these concentric circles. It asks us to widen the circle, to identify with something bigger than just our team. The edge of our goodwill, the very edge of the next circle, is what the practice seeks out when we do loving kindness practice. Not only the comfortable inner circle, but it takes us into the outer circles. When anger and contempt arise, that is the edge. And I feel anger and contempt, even though I look very peaceful in my little Buddhist outfit. I feel it a lot these days. I feel it toward, like many of you, toward those leading our nation into some very dangerous and scary and harmful situations, in my opinion. I feel it. I have a big class chip on my shoulder. I feel it toward the billionaire class. That's my politics. That's my Liverpool or Manchester t-shirt. It's where I hit the limit. And this is the danger. This is the goodishness that the Metta Sutta means to address. Having sorted the world into good and bad, we tend to build a home in the good half. We construct an in-group of the virtuous, the people on the right side of history, us. And once an us exists, there's a them. And with that, we risk that we will come to despise the people in the them group, while telling ourselves the whole time that we do it in the name of love. And we see this in history. I've watched good people do it in our own time. I have done it myself. Eventually, if we aren't careful and vigilant, a shooter, having made his home in the binary, walks into a mosque and starts shooting. Or wars are waged and bombs are dropped and genocides are enacted, all in the name of something they think of as love. Love of country, love of religion, love of a point of view. Metta, loving kindness practice, is medicine for the illness of taking sides. It's a way to shine light on the shadow of the limited binary, our exclusive and often harsh in-grouping, our tribalism. Our tradition calls our tribalism the residue of some ancient twisted karma. Harmful ways of seeing and acting that accumulated over time. And just think of how humans have handled issues like power and race and religion over time, handing down the wounds of taking sides through countless generations. Buddhist practice takes responsibility for this ancient twistedness as our work in this lifetime, lived out in this place, under these conditions and the particular circumstances of our own lives. Our practice is to untwist the ancient twisted karma and to draw a wider circle around who belongs, rejecting, in the end, the unhelpful binary. And this is where that word goodish returns. If I am only ever goodish, if I, in my own practice, recognize that I am only goodish, always an unfinished work in progress, then so is the person that I have filed under the category of bad. They are also goodish. And it's an empathy gym for us to practice with this, to keep widening the circle. And the limits of the binary cannot survive a circle drawn even bigger, always wider than the widest one we could draw before. And that is the practice of the Metta Sutta. So how do we practice this? First, limitless goodwill is an orientation, not an achievement, but an existential orientation. It's not a feeling you have to wait to have, but a direction you choose to face. You choose it, you return to it, you keep growing into it. That is what makes it a practice, not a passing mood or a momentary act of kindness or charity. It is a continuously reenacted redrawing of the circle over and over again. We reorient our view, our perspective, which in Buddhism means we reorient how our thoughts, feelings, words, and actions come together and function as a way of life and as a way of living. And our method includes a lot of repetition because a mind is a very difficult thing to change. Second, the practice begins by letting the hard feelings show us where the work is. In contemplative practice, in zazen or meditation, we cultivate a kind of strong back, one that can bear the weight of our goodishness honestly and open the circle a little wider anyway. And I could tell you 100 stories from Gather, our community space around the corner, where I reached the edge of my goodwill. And I'm being invited again and again to widen the circle. Where someone who has a very difficult temperament comes in. Where someone with a very dark and dangerous attitude comes in. Where someone with profound prejudices different from my own come in. The t-shirt they are wearing that identifies them as being on the other team. This is what brings me to the next circle of belonging. Extending goodwill, the Metta Sutta suggests, is not passive work. It is a flesh and blood process of extending ourselves into another being so that we grow together in goodwill. And it can be fierce, and it can be clear, and of course it can be warm and soft. It can also be protest with love. But there is one thing that extending goodwill refuses to do. Goodwill refuses to dehumanize. And in doing so, it alters the binary into concentric circles of care. It takes practice, coming back again and again to keep extending goodwill past my limits and to widen the circle toward those we find easy to care about, to those we feel apathy toward those we actively don't like, toward those who have hurt us or caused harm. And we exercise this like a muscle, like going to a gym. But that returning to the limits of my goodwill over and over again, day in and day out, is the practice of metta. The limit of our goodwill is not where our loving kindness fails. The limits of our goodwill is exactly where loving kindness begins. May it be so. Everybody stand. I believe we'll sing ourselves out today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Protect the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings. I invite you to join me in the extinguishing of the chalice words.